Oh, here we are. I say oh because it's quite warm. But actually it's not warm, it's hot. And our ever fluctuating weather over here. Anyway, it's another Wednesday Walkie Talkie. Blue skies, bloody sun beating down. Of course, every time the sun comes out and it's warm for a couple of days, the UK is always in a grip of a record-breaking heat wave because we never had a few hot days historically. So everything's record-breaking because that's the time we live in. I wonder how many people actually do bother to go back and check. It'd be interesting to see. Since records began, well, okay. What about before records began? Do we know how hot it was then? Nope. Anyway, enough of that bollocks. It is the Wednesday Walkie Talkie and I've got absolutely no idea what to talk about. QuakeCon happened, which was really good. We had the 30th anniversary of Quake. John Romero, John Carmack, Tom Hall, like the OG founders of id Software, which is probably fair to say is my favourite game development studio. Well, as Doom is my favourite game, the original Doom, that would make sense. And it was a lot of fun. They released an entire new episode for the original Quake. When I say the original Quake, it's Quake enhanced, but it's the original Quake, just the enhanced version of it. That's available on console and on Steam, but weirdly enough, as I do this video, I don't think it's out on GOG yet. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but I'm sure it'll come there sooner or later. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I checked it out. I don't want to actually go too much into it at the moment because I'm doing the playthrough of Quake on GOG's. Actually hoping by the time I finish that it will have actually come out. Otherwise I'll have to flip that over to Steam. So yeah, just okay. It's pretty gnarly in there at the moment with all them weeds. So yeah, I don't want to get too involved in playing it because I'd like to do it as a blind playthrough as part of my Quake playthrough that I'm doing. But I did have a little go on it because it's got a few interesting mechanics that aren't in the other Quake episodes or in the original Quake, that are quite interesting. You don't start out with full health. You actually have to find things to increase your health with, and there are also some enemies where you kill one version of them and then they come back as ones I encountered so far, they come back as the zombies, which is quite cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that and where that goes. Have a nosy. No, nothing here. They mustn't like this area in the summer, which is understandable. Doesn't look the most pleasantest of bodies of water. But yeah, So I've been doing that, continuing my Resident Evil playthrough as Chris. And I've got to do Jill. I'm going to do Resident Evil 2, maybe Leon, and then Claire. So, yeah. I'm just trying not to get impaled on any thorns that are growing. He says as he trips over a tree stump. Wonderful. Sunglasses are great, except when you go into a really shaded area and then you don't see obvious obstacle. Right, anyway, we're out of that. I swear to God, someday I am going to, do you know what, sod it. This is insane because it is really hot. And I'm about to go into totally open area with a full heat blast. Interesting insect sounds over there. But yeah, let's take the right fork. I've been enjoying it, and like I said, I put the post up saying I was taking a break from streaming, well, not streaming, but doing the playthrough of Doom the Dark Ages Revelations DLC. I've not abandoned it, I just needed a break from it, because I wasn't, when I say I'm not enjoying it, I don't mean to say it's rubbish and I hate it. It's just, I'm somebody, I think you get to a point where you have to be in the right frame of mind to play things. And I just need to be in a better frame of mind. That's not judgment on the game. I'm actually enjoying it. It's tough, but I'm enjoying it. But sometimes when you're playing games, you're mindful of the fact that when you're doing a playthrough, sometimes you can be frustrated. I'm one of them people that's just like, oh my God, this is terrible, even when it's not. So yeah, I was just mindful of the fact that I didn't want it to be a whingy playthrough. I thought, no, I'll do it when I'm in a better frame of mind. I've got other stuff to play through. It is Quake's 30th anniversary, so I was going to do that, I think, anyway, but later in the year, but I thought, stick it. You know, it's QuakeCon. I'll do it now. Jesus Christ, it's bloody hot. I should not have come out into this more open area. The worst part about this now is knowing that you've got to go back. So, wonderful. But yeah, you know, it also set me thinking about how great gaming was in the 90s. We sort of went from that traditional 2D to 3D. Once you got into like the first person shooters being a real thing, you get this much more, do you know what? No, looks a bit overgrown, that. I'm just trying to plot my way back, see if I can do like a circuit, but that looks a bit too overgrown, so yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, the 90s were just brilliant for gaming. Really was. Because you still had the old traditional games, but you had this brand new sort of FPS style. I know there was like 3D Monster Maze, I get that. But I'm talking about, you know, after Wolfenstein, Catacomb, all that stuff, you know, the big stuff. And once you got into that 3D, the drive then was to improve it. You know, Wolfenstein, you know, Catacomb, of course, which id Software did prior to Wolfenstein 3D. And then Doom, you know, that really started to push the technology forward. And with that came the push to make improvements to graphics. And that's where like your 3D cards came in. They were dedicated, you know, your 3D effects cards and what have you, that were absolutely dedicated to delivering, you know, much better graphics. And there was that brief period, as you always get, where, yeah, the graphics looked less chunky, but the detail was sacrificed. And then, you know, different texture techniques started to come in, and you end up then with some really impressive graphics. But it was a great decade to be a gamer, because you're watching this evolution of video gaming unfolding right before you, and it was quite a quantum leap going from traditional 2D to 3D. Really was like a giant step forward. A murder of crows. Once you get that, once you take that, you know, that big step forward, it opened up all new possibilities, not just in first person, but third person gaming as well. You know, when you go, in terms of Legend of Zelda, when you go from A Link to the Past to Ocarina of Time, you know, my missus says it was so jarring at first, because you went from this top-down game to a third-person game. And she loves Ocarina of Time, but, you know, she says initially she was like, oh, what have they done? It's like, yeah. And that was the case, you know. For some people it took a bit of getting used to. But we don't think about it now, because the focus now is more on making things look visually more impressive. But the gameplay mechanics aren't, you know, radically different. It's just visually an impressive game. And that's one of the things I sort of miss. You know, we are in that era of just refinement rather than massive evolutionary steps. And that's inevitable. You know, there's only so many advancements you can make. And then it just becomes a case of, right, how do we make this better? When you see the remakes and the remasters, you know, you do gain that appreciation of just how things have improved. Back on track, back in the shade. Shouldn't have done that. That was bloody hot. That was damn hot. Anyway, there's a lot more to this place. When it cools off a little bit, I'll probably do a bit more variety rather than just doing this circuit. But so yeah, I'd say, like, I mean, I started gaming in the late 70s with Space Invaders and the Radifin TV games console, which is basically a Pong clone console. I grew up gaming in the 90s, in the 80s, but you know, the 90s will always have a lot of fond memories for me. You know, that just seemed to strike a really good balance between modern and old. Sometimes these days it is a lot more towards the modern. It's one of the things I've said. Doom 2016, which is a decade old now. It's 10 years since that, incredibly enough. But that really nailed it, the balance, for me personally. Doom Eternal started to incorporate more modern gaming stuff into it. The greater focus on leveling up, more moves, you know, jumping around and stuff like that. Doom the Dark Ages sort of cut back on the jumping around, but then increased, you know, your power-ups and your move set. So you've got loads of keys to try to remember in the heat of battle, which is not easy when you're sort of getting on a bit. I think has also, like I think I said in a previous video or whatever, I do feel it's built more around a controller than a keyboard and mouse. I sort of played through the earlier stuff again to get back to where I was, and I found it a lot easier with the joypad, and I think there's something in that. Now, a few years ago, that would be anathema as a PC gamer. But even in the sort of remakes, remasters, re-releases of the old stuff, you get the feeling that the control calibration now feels more like it's defaulted to the joypad as opposed to the keyboard and mouse. It used to be the other way around. You used to spend ages trying to calibrate the bloody joypads. Back in the 90s, you just, sod this. You know, unless it was like a flight sim and I had a joystick, he was like, I'll just play with the keyboard and mouse, it's easier. But it could be just me, you know, it could be just me. So, ring the bell, give him hell. But yeah, so yeah, I've got to say, been enjoying it, recording the playthrough of Quake and Resident Evil. I keep forgetting what the hell I'm doing in Resident Evil, because I have only been playing it at the weekends when I've been recording the footage for the week. So, and with that, you sort of like, oh God, where am I up to? I tell you, if you didn't have on the map the visual indicators as to which rooms have been completed, the rooms that have still got stuff in it, whether it be items or something for you to do, they flash red. And when you've done it, they flash green. Yeah, without that, I'd be knackered. So, but yeah, enjoying that as well. Camera angles are always hilarious in those earlier Resident Evil games. It's like, oh, that's good. So I've got a close-up face on of your character on the screen. Can I see what's in front of him, please? And see where I'm going? You know, I really would like to not end up dead or munched on by something that I couldn't see. The character could, but like, there's no way that I could see it because the camera said no. There's wonderful fixed camera angles. It's why the more recent remakes that have taken the perspective that Resident Evil 4 took, which is sort of over the shoulder, third person, I personally think are better. I know purists will disagree, and I get that, but you can still play it the old way. You can still get the original Resident Evil 2 and 3 and, you know, Resident Evil 0, they're still available. I just like the fact that they've made it more so you can see where you're going and see what you're doing, because that does put people off. Also the fact that when the camera flips, so does your controls, which is really annoying sometimes when you're trying to navigate the environment, but that's just how it was. That was just how gaming was back then. You just forget because you get used to modern conceits. Some modern stuff is better, some modern stuff isn't. It depends on the game. I prefer my fast-paced first-person shooters to have very simple controls, so you can focus more on the action and the shooting. You can do that more than you can actually focusing on having to look at the bloody keyboard to see what key my fingers are resting on. Because, as I've said, you have to take your fingers off the movement keys sometimes to change a weapon profile, or, you know, to engage in a new weapon, a new special attack or something. So you know, you're actually having to briefly stop moving. And fast-paced first-person shooter, you just become, you know, you're going to become an open target. You're going to get nailed. Which is why I do think, having revisited it with a controller, has made it a better experience for me personally. Although I do miss the more precision that I get with a keyboard and mouse, but hey ho. That's just the way that it is. There's a nice breeze anyway, but I'm going to be knackered by the time I get home. There might be a delay with this video. Well, it'll be up today, but it might be an evening kick-off. I do have a lot of other things I need to do as well. Normally I get home and I edit it and upload it as soon as I can, but I do have other things I need to do. And I'm a bit later coming out as well. Random bike. Seen a couple of seemingly abandoned bikes. It's on my walk today. There's one before I started recording. I've seen another one there now. It's bizarre. Anyhow. So what else? Oh yeah, The Lord of the Rings War of the North has appeared on Steam and on GOG. I think I might have to get that. I wish they'd bring back the RTS games they did. They did 2 of them, they were really good. A couple of real-time strategies. I think it was EA that published them, so they're probably stuck in some weird copyright hell, because I think Warner Brothers have the license now for the Lord of the Rings games. That really does annoy me. I think when you pay for a license for a game, it locked in specifically for that game, I think it should be firmly attached to that game, like permanently. So as long as you just re-release the game and you don't sort of remake it, and by that I mean like from the ground up, I don't think there's anything wrong in remastering it so it works on new systems, but I don't think the licenses should expire. It should be tied to a specific game. It's not like EA can then just go, oh well, let's release a dozen new Lord of the Rings games. No, I think it should be tied to a specific game. That way you can continuously keep that game available. We're talking about the whole fear that people have with digital distribution only, and the ability companies have of taking stuff out of your library and delisting things and hiding behind the whole licensing issue with it. I don't think it's a problem if you have it attached to a specific game. That way, licensing stops being an issue. I mean, there's a lot of really good games that are just gone. Whether we'll ever see them again, it's not known. The No One Lives Forever, the 2 of those games, utterly brilliant, just in licensing hell. I might be mistaken, but I'm sure a company, I don't know if it's Night Dive or one of them anyway, has already remastered it, or said they can do the remaster very easily, but they can't release it because there's a dispute over who actually has the license for the game. I think it was Fox Interactive. Of course, now Disney own Fox, so I guess they own Fox Interactive, but I think I don't think it was cut and dry. I don't know if Warner Brothers was in something to do with it, or thinking that they had the rights to it as well. It might have been, that might be the issue here. Sorry, I'm just trying to see the timer on my camera. I've got my sunglasses on and I can't see the damn screen. Anyway, let's press on. So yeah, it's very annoying, and especially also when it comes to quite a few retro games as well. You've got stuff like when you see these, like Atari's collection. Atari releases its collection and it's not got the Star Wars games. I mean, for me, the original Star Wars game, was it like 83 or something, 81, 83, around that era, is the best arcade game ever. My favourite arcade game ever. And by extension, probably my favourite Atari game ever. Can't get it. Atari released these 50-year compilations, and because of the licensing, because obviously Disney owns Star Wars now, you don't get it. It never appears. There was 3 of them. The Return of the Jedi one wasn't as good as the other 2. It was alright, but they ditched the wireframe graphics, the 3D graphics, and they went for this sort of isometric pixel. It's alright, but it's nowhere near as good, in my view. The only place you can get that now is you can buy an arcade machine for a few £100 that has all 3 on it. I think the Empire Strikes Back was basically a chip swap on the board, so you use the same board but they just swapped the chip out, or they added a chip or whatever for the Empire Strikes Back one. But that was really good as well. But the last time I owned all 3 of them on a system was back in the 80s on the Commodore 64. I think it was Domark who released them. That was all the way back then. So yeah, it's just it's annoying. And if licenses were tied to games and there was no expiry for that particular game, it would solve that problem. And nobody loses out, you know. Nobody loses out. It's silly. And these companies do miss out on money, because they'd still get a cut from the sale of these games. Even in a modern era, they still get a cut. So don't know why. Well, I do, because they're just greedy. They want more money. It's like, fine, we'll have no money then. And that's because a lot of the people that run these things, run these companies, are a bit thick when it comes to it. You look at the state of the games industry today and you just think so much of its problems are just down to stupid decisions made by people who don't get it. I've always said, like, when you employ people from businesses outside of the games industry that think that they can just come in and apply the same type of stuff that makes selling, you know, cans of cola or foodstuffs or, you know, totally unrelated stuff. If you think that you can bring that into that environment and, you know, and it work, no, you've got to, you know, if you don't adapt and understand the market and who you're selling to, you'll fail. And a lot of these people just have 2 giant egos and think, well, I was successful because I managed to increase the revenue and profits of company X, you know, that sold, you know, crayons or whatever. Because I did that, I can then apply that to video games. And they don't listen. And they fail. And the company either goes under or they end up jogging on. It's like, no. When you're selling crayons, you're doing a box shift. When you're selling video games, you're asking people to invest on a different level. You know, R&D, the development time with video games is key. and they just have a very limited understanding in a lot of cases of what it is they're dealing with. There's not much going on there today, and I'm knackered because I did that extra bit. I think I'll do my end bit from here today. It was a bit busy around there, I say, because I've come out a bit later. I managed to find the swans, so yeah, we'll call it there today. I'm gonna head on back and get a nice cool drink, I think, and hopefully see you again next week, life permitting. And yeah, let's say not really much. It was just a bit of a vague ramble today, but yeah, I think got through quite some stuff. If they could sort those licenses out, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's doable. It's just about having the will. But I think if they did, they would actually find that they could make easy money without doing anything, you know. But you can't get it into the heads of some of these people, because they think that unless you're making $1 billion off everything you do, everything that you put out, it's not worth it. And then they wonder why the companies go under. It's like, yeah, but the small stuff that keeps a constant stream in, that's what funds your big games. And you always get those people that say, well, don't you think they've thought of that? And it's like, no, I don't. No, I don't. Because, interesting, I was watching an interview with Sir Jim Ratcliffe talking to Gary Neville about Manchester United, and he'd made a load of cuts. So Gary Neville then actually suggested to Sir Jim Ratcliffe a way that he could have done something. And this is supposed to be one of the richest guys in the country. So it just shows you, no, they're not as smart as you think. A lot of the time, these people lack common sense, and they lose a lot of money. Well, they rely on a singular successes, and then they jump all over that. But meanwhile, they completely miss the constant smaller revenue streams that will keep them afloat. Also give them resilience should a big game that they've invested a lot in not be successful. And companies did release games that weren't successful in the past and still kept going. That just doesn't seem to happen anymore. So yeah, you know, I don't fall for that argument of, well, don't you think they've thought of that? No, there's many occasions they don't think of it. They're just not wired that way. And like I say, especially in the video game industry, they come from different types of industries. And sometimes some of them will listen, some of them will adapt and be successful, and other times they won't, and then they fail. So, you know, I'll just give you one example there of a very, very rich man, a multi-billionaire, not thinking of something that would have meant that not only did he not have to make the cut that he made, but he also would have avoided bad PR, which is, you know, is so valuable to have good PR. So there you go. Right, it's too hot, and I'm off. Can't be arsed. So I'll catch you later.